Well, it is now 7 o'clock right here in Nairobi, Kenya. That's local time, and it's time for us to look at the way it is. Every Monday, we weigh in and look at how things have been going, politically speaking. And as usual, we have a very able panel to do that. I'll introduce them first before we set the pace for what we're going to be talking about this morning. My immediate left, we have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Honorable Member of Parliament for Kiharu, and that is Irungu Kangata. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. And shortly, we're going to be joined by Senator Omar Hassan, who's the Senator for Mombasa County. But now, one of the things, of course, that has been causing uproar and tongues wagging is to do with the IEBC. And there are several things within the IEBC that the government has a position and the opposition has a position that possibly are not seeing eye to eye. But let's start off, first of all, with some of the happenings and what has been going on in regards to the IEBC. And we have the Majority Leader, Eden Duale, coming out to call for a special sitting that's going to be on Tuesday. And mainly, it is to amend a law and allow manual voter tallying should the system fail. But let's listen into what has been said so far.
So IEBC is saying where technology fails in a polling station, we must have an alternative redress to that problem. Has a generator backup in the event power goes off. In our own homes, we have got candles preparing ourselves in the event power goes off.
Tumeona njama inapangwa na Jubilee kuiba kura.
Uchaguzi utakuweko na mipangilio ya kufanya uchaguzi iko na inaendelea. Kwa hivyo tusibabaishwe na hiyo maneno.
Huwezi kuwa wewe unatafuta kiti, unapigania kiti na vile vile unataka kuwa supervisor ya IEBC. How is that going to happen? You cannot be a referee in your own game, my friend.
All right, so that's part of what has been said so far. Allow me now to introduce Omar Hassan, Senator for Mombasa County. Good morning.
Morning.
And thank you for joining us. And well, let's start right there with the IEBC and of course a proposal by government. And this is to allow or to amend the law for there to be manual voter tallying should the system fail. Again, I repeat, should the system fail. Senator Omar Hassan, your thoughts on that? And it sounds reasonable. And to use Duale's example, he said, even in our homes, we have candles, just in case Kenya Power, does not come through in terms of electricity.
The question is, at what time did they finally realize this? Because this was a piece of law that was negotiated in Parliament. Mm-hmm. It was negotiated before the Select Committee. All these issues ought to have been brought up at that point in time. So we acknowledge the failings of technology. You cannot anticipate failure. That anticipation of failure, what happened in the last election, the minute Kenyans started voting electronically countrywide, the system just collapsed. And that's what led to, this whole idea of manual voting. So there was chaos in terms of voter register, chaos in terms of results transmission, chaos in literally every regard. So what we have done this time is to secure the entire process of voting through legislative action. So therefore, it is for us to ensure that there's an IEBC that can be able to undertake some of that work in a manner that guarantees Kenyans that technology, that system will work on that particular day. This, if you listen to what they're saying, they anticipate literally an entire system failure. Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to do is, whereas we could, there's some reasonableness in what that might have been uttered, but these issues were not brought out. They have a problem in the electronic voter transmission. Mm-hmm. So, and we know that the electronic voter transmission is the one that secures that the votes that come from Kipipiri, from Tharak, are the ones that ultimately reflect at Bomas of Kenya or KICC. The ones that are not carried physically, where the form is then altered midstream. So I think for me, I think these issues ought to have been canvassed at that point in time. For them to now so suddenly walk up from their slumbers and say how the whole system now has issues and now we need to start, undertaking a couple of things. I think is where the opposition
reads
mischief.
Okay, now the question then would be, should there be failure? What do you propose?
I think we're having we've called a meeting this afternoon at 2:30. In fact, that's one of the, fundamentally, I'm here for these two reasons. I came in last evening because as usual, we have our show today.
Correct.
And then I'm also here to attend that meeting for the opposition. So we have tasked a lot of our people to come and give us feedback of what practically needs to be done moving forward.
So currently you don't have a position as to what would happen?
No, the position is very simple. We are not going to anticipate any change of that law.
Okay. All right. Ambrose Weda, is it practical to expect that there should be no failure?
I'm laughing because I've all along maintained that our problem is with our legislators. When they are given a task, they busy themselves with taking tea and going into the saloons and so. So they do not look at the nitty-gritty and they do not look at it honestly. Therefore, they give us half-baked legislation that they can foresee will cause a problem. When you talk about electronic transmission of results, okay, you are just talking about results being fed into a phone. It's being fed into a phone, Safaricom phone, and then sent, and then it is there. Our latest experience was that the last one failed. So to go and do a legislation where you say that is the only way is basically burying your head in the sand. I say so because where I work as chairman, we have what is called agriculture management system, where you weigh cane electronically. When the tinga goes on there, you wait and it's all recorded. But occasionally it fails. We have to go manual. So with that experience, this one can also fail. Now, when the law says it's the only way, then what it means is that you wait. When it fails, you repair it before you transmit. That can be days and years and taking the anxiety. I think the legislators should admit they made a mistake. They did not look at this thing deeply. They were asleep, taking tea. My brother, you'll explain that. But now it is good they have realized 7 months before that we need the two systems. In case this one fails, we do this. So it is the better way. The earlier they do it, the better.
Okay. Irungu Kangata, you're a member of parliament, and it looks like members of parliament slept on the job. Again, you have a legal background. So to have just one way, which is technology-based, and we have the experience, like Weda has mentioned, that it can actually fail. Why is it that this was left out?
Well, first and foremost, you need to replay the clip showing what was happening in the floor of the House during the debate of this law. Several members of parliament made several proposals, but there were some members of parliament who had expressed instructions from their leaders, and those members of parliament were all drawn from the opposition. They were told not to support even a removal of a comma or even a grammatical error on that bill. And they shouted down each and every person who made any proposal. And therefore, some of us, including myself, with a positive proposal, we were defeated. So I blame CORD because I was in the floor of the House. And number two, why is it that we could not override that? On our part, Jubilee part, we were amenable to amendments. But on the part of the opposition, they were not amenable to amendments. But on the part of the Jubilee leadership, they felt that in the worst case scenario, if these people insist that the thing should go as it is, then fine. So therefore, they never lobbied members probably to support individual members' proposals. So I blame CORD when it comes to the issue of any defects in this law. But on the issue which you have asked my colleague here regarding whether we should revert to manual system in the event the computerized system fails, I think it goes without saying. It is very unreasonable for us to put all our faith in one system. But the bigger point is that CORD is not being bona fide, is not acting in good faith. It is malafide, acting in very bad faith. Because even the actual implementation of this law, it has been opposing to it. When we start doing auditing process, they oppose. They say, no, why did you pick KPMG? Whereas this is something that is captured in the law. When you now start doing other procurements of materials, they start opposing. Meaning, it appears to be a systematic method of opposing the actual implementation of this law, probably with a view of stalling these elections. Because if indeed they were just being bona fide, I would strictly not mind what they are saying. But now that noting they are the one who are actually putting bottlenecks towards implementation of this law.
All right, we'll come to KPMG.
Look at the Ghanaian elections. You know, I had the opportunity last Wednesday to meet the chairperson of the Ghanaian EEC Electoral Commission.
Right.
She was actually in Nairobi.
Yes.
And was able to attain the function that she gave her thoughts about managing credible electoral systems in Africa, particularly in divided societies like the ones we have. So I had the opportunity, and she said one of the greatest challenge about managing a free and fair, transparent process of election is the transmission of results. And she said even there was a point at which their system was hacked. The website of the Ghanaian Electoral Commission was hacked. So I think what happens is we cannot prepare ourselves for failure rather than prepare ourselves to succeed. We do not want to open a Pandora for a collapse of an entire national system of elections like the last time the entire biometric system countrywide collapsed.
But Senator,
you know, where there are one or two isolated cases,
yes, Senator,
that is what we're going to talk about. One or two isolated cases.
Wouldn't it be reasonable, hang on, wouldn't it be reasonable then to prepare for worst case scenarios? Not saying that it's going to fail and preparing for it to fail, but should it fail? Shouldn't there be a redress?
Yes.
Why do these systems so conveniently fail on that day?
No, you are saying yeah.
So
would we rather
systems fail conveniently on that day? And do you anticipate that system will not be up for the entire transmission period? You know, there are questions we're asking. Fail, fix it, transmit.
No.
That's simple.
Mr.
Okay.
Omar,
Yes.
Mr. Omar is saying that he was told by the lady who was in charge of those elections in that West African country that there is the potentiality of hacking. To me, that then supports our contention that taking into account this system can be hacked, then we should have a system of a backup. And a backup is you revert to the manual. And if at all she's admitting that in Ghana there was hacking, we all know in US, as we speak, there is a scandal of Russians who are said to have hacked into American system. You'd imagine America being the most powerful country in this world. Their systems were being hacked by a foreign agency. So therefore, that then supports the idea that we should not trust computers. We should have a plan B. And a plan B is you revert to the manual system.
I think let me clarify this. It is not a plan B. As it stands, it is a straitjacket. You either transmit through the electronic system or you don't transmit. You transmit in any other way, it would be illegal.
Currently. But isn't that what the members of parliament are going to amend?
That is why it should be, and yet we are saying the spectrum is there could be a problem. Even Safaricom can wake up and say, our system has broken down. So we are not entertaining anybody. Or we need this kind of billions for us to assist you. So that is why you say, this is the system, but if it does not work, we use this. That's what the law is. Now, let me just finish. When a parliamentarian sits here and tells me, oh, it was CORD, CORD was the one who did it, and then we were forced. Are you saying that the parliament is not independent, or you people slept on the job? Did you vote and lose the vote, or you people just cheered and had your allowances and left? You have put us in this morass of confusion. You MPs. No. And you must admit that you are given a responsibility, a direct mandate. You could tell President Uhuru in the face, no, and tell Raila in the face, no, this is the right thing. So, having failed, admit quickly that we made a mistake here, and we are going to correct it. All of you. You are putting this country at risk, you MPs, and then you want to blame external forces that we were forced. Forced by who?
No, look here. We have a law which is called Political Parties Act. And that law was effected a long time before we became parliamentarians. It is very clear that once you are whipped by your party, you're supposed to follow those instructions. And if you fail, they can even whip you, they can get you out of committee, they can even declare you as a non-compliant member, and you lose their political
Commonwealth practice.
You must follow.
Let's hear from Senator. Let's hear from Senator.
Commonwealth practice is such that what you exercise is your freedom of speech. In fact, that's why in the part on representation, they say there shall be freedom of speech in Parliament. On that part, I think Commonwealth practice is such that what I say and the vote I take in Parliament cannot constitute action politically by my political party. That is almost it's crystallized practice within Commonwealth. That if I come into Parliament and I've disagreed with Raila Odinga, or Kalonzo Musyoka, or Moses Wetangula, and I decide to vote for a motion independent of the position, because I first and foremost in that Parliament represent the people who elected me. Yep. And there are certain unique interests that I might be able to articulate differently. There are certain, I've opposed certain laws where the position of code is well known, because I say to myself that this has an impact, an adverse impact on my constituency. So I don't agree on that part. I was one of those also opposed the report. Go and read the Hansard. I opposed the report, and I opposed it on grounds that why are people telling us that we cannot speak to this report and follow parliamentary procedure in the enactment of this report. I spoke to it, it's in the Hansard of Parliament, and it did not constitute any disciplinary action on my part. But then, secondly, what we are saying we will not allow to happen, maybe put another way, is for somebody to carry that form, is it called 16?
Yes, the
36, whatever it is. For somebody to carry it from a polling station, Tarakaniti, or somewhere in Kiambu, or somewhere in Nyanza, and get into a matatu with it, or a public transport, or whatever
or
other
a
means,
GK vehicle,
or in a GK vehicle, and we are at Bomas of Kenya, waiting for that form to arrive. That's what we are saying we will not allow, that you will not transmit those results manually. That is period. And that is a position we are holding, that nobody is going to enter a vehicle and say that he or she is driving to Nairobi to go and transmit the results from a polling station.
Yes, I think to that extent the senator is right. Let me clarify this. You have heard my MP here saying that you can be removed from committees. In fact, it's all about money and self-interest. It's not about the people of Kenya. If you can remove me from committees, then I will follow what you say so that you don't remove me. My brother, that is wrong. What the senator said is a concession that let us amend the law. The law itself has a problem, but let us amend it in such a way that it does not create loopholes, such that you can say, look, you are supposed to transmit electronically, but should that fail, then we have maybe a process of scanning those reports, okay, and then transmitting them.
Not necessarily like he says manually, but
manually.
This can be in a
that one will take very long, because some places are inaccessible. You need several choppers. So, but what I'm saying, he is conceding there's a problem, and then they look at the nitty-gritty. That nitty-gritty, the alternative way of doing it is what I'm asking you. Look at it soberly. Tell CORD again not to just shout the way they are shouting. Then they will be outwitted. Then they cry foul. Go with that mind when you meet them and tell them, yes, physical running around with the forms, we say no. But we say if this electronic system fails, these are other ameliorating methods of transmitting it in a way that does not compromise the integrity of the documents. Go and tell them that. I know some of them will just be sipping coffee and tea, and when they finish, they say, this is Jubilee, we are doing nothing, and then they come home and start crying, rigging. Then they should stop that.
All right.
And you see, the system is such that when you finish counting the results, you feed it into the system,
yes,
such that the system uploads itself automatically.
Yes.
So for us, the bone of contention is what I reiterate, is somebody and the guard of security guards traveling with a form. You remember when Kevitu was waiting for a form that had not arrived?
Yes.
Indefinitely. They could not, they were trying to raise the agents, or is it the returning officers through phone? They can't get them. They are trying to raise I don't know who by phone. They can't get them. So then finally when they came, those forms, some of them were altered midstream. So we are saying that we will not allow.
Okay. Irungu Kangata, is that reasonable that we will not have any manual transmission, but it can still be done? Like Omar Hassan has already given an example and said, if the system fails, fix it, then transmit.
Well, then that will mean some of the cheeky players are going to go to Russia. They talk with those sophisticated hackers, and then they hack the system, and then they should not be complaining. If at all, the results don't favor them. To me, I think we should be reasonable. It all happens in each and every democracy where computers do not necessarily work. And where they don't work, we should have a backup system. And the backup system is you resort to manual system. Be that as it may, if they insist with computers, me, I would even urge Jubilee, fine, we go for it. But if at all it doesn't work, they are going to take the blame. They should not be saying, hey, we rigged through computers. Because when you look at the way they have been responding to various issues, there has been a certain thread. Oh, we do this, they oppose it. We do this, they oppose it.
Now, given that this was a collective agreement between Jubilee and CORD when this was set into law, why have they not been included in the discussion? Why is it suddenly coming that now it's called to Parliament? Why weren't they included and told this is what we're thinking of doing, so that it's agreed upon? Because what is being raised here is suspicion.
No, I can tell you there was mutual consensus on some of the problems which are arising out of the implementation of this law. And those discussions were being held under the ambit of Justice and Legal Committee of the National Assembly. That committee is comprised of members of the law-ruling Jubilee Coalition and also CORD. And you'll see we have been churning out various reports regarding the status of the implementation of the new laws. And one of the issues that we found quite problematic is this one. Because that committee has appeared before us, we have had discussion, and some of the members of CORD who are very crucial, they are members of that committee. Okay. A good example is...
Let me just say something.
Let me pause you, gentlemen. I want to take a call from Margaret in Sabatia, and anybody else who'd want to call. This would be a good opportunity so that we take the calls together, then we can continue the conversation. Good morning, Margaret. Thank you for calling. To your point, Margaret. Hello.
Habari ya asubuhi.
Nzuri kabisa, Margaret.
Gitonga, unajua Kisungu ndio inanipitanga kwa masikio.
Okay, Kiswahili bado ni sawa.
Sasa mimi nataka kuuliza hivi. Wakati ule mwingine tulipiga kura. Wakati ule mwingine tulipiga kura na hiyo mashini ya kufinya vidole.
Okay.
Wakasema kura zimeibiwa. Wakasema wataki hiyo vifaa ya kufinya vidole. Haya, sasa saa hii wanataka mtengeneze mambo ikuwe mzuri, tukienda kwa kura ziwe sawa sawa. Tena ni mapingano. Na mimi naambia huyu kijana anaitwa Omar. Mimi namwambia nyinyi mnapeleka hii nchi mahali ambapo si pazuri. Kwa sababu nini? Mnang'ang'ania madaraka yenu wenyewe kugawana viti na hamjali huyu mwananchi wa kawaida hapa katikati ako wapi. Wacheni maneno ya kugangania madaraka ya ulimwengu. Na ikiwa mambo iko, tengenezeni mambo sawa sawa. Kila saa maneno, kila saa. Na maongea yenu watu wa kodi si mzuri. Ni ile naweza tumbukiza watu katika lindi la shimo ambalo Kenya itarudi mambo mbaya. Hata itakuwa mbaya kuliko ya 2007. Unapoongea.
Aya, asante sana, Margaret. Martin in Nairobi. Good morning, Martin. Thank you for calling. Hello. Martin in Nairobi, if we can hear me, go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you very much, Michael. First of all, in fact, I want to comment with regard to what that is saying. Okay. That list is totally out of context from what we are discussing now. What we are discussing about an IT system. And I want to speak to you as an IT systems engineer myself. You know, when you have an IT system, you can always parallel have what you call a redundant system, which will be approved by both parties. If we have decided we already have a law that we are going to use to transmit these results, when we try to discuss issues of manual, we want to go back to what Kibaki did and what Uhuru did last time. Let us follow a system that is robust, a system that has got redundancy, and I think with regard to what Senator Omar is saying, I was in the U.S. the other day when we were having elections. What happens in the U.S. when you vote? Actually, after voting, there's a paper they put through, kind of like a fax system, to the tallying center. So why don't you have, if you think this is going to fail, have a fax redundant system that can actually fax this sheet to the tallying center so that this thing can be validated.
Okay, so are you saying, Martin, that there's a way of having the electronic system working, as it were, without fail?
No, if a system fails, you should be able to have what we call a redundancy system.
What is a redundancy system?
A redundancy system is a system that is approved, that is running in line and in tandem with the other system. When it says it's automatically, the way a generator works. The way a generator works is that when the Kenya Power fails, automatically the redundancy generator automatically comes on. It's not the old one where you go and restart a generator, the old system. If Jubilee says they're digital, they should be able to know this simple thing.
All right.
But anything else, they want to do these things of oathing. They don't want to leave power. This thing that Kenyatta started. And this should be stopped.
All right. Thank you very much, Martin, in Nairobi. And you're free to call in case you'd like to participate in the conversation. This is the way it is. Let's start with Senator Omar Hassan. There's Margaret, who sounded obviously quite agitated, but again, maybe she may have missed the whole point. But the point is, she feels, this is a perception that she has, that there seems to always be a problem being raised. Maybe
natamjibu Kiswahili manake aliuliza Kiswahili. Nasema hayo maoni yake na tunaheshimu maoni yake. Lakini katika hali yetu ya kidemokrasia leo inatupatia sisi fursa kama wapinzani. Pale ambapo tunateteshi, pale ambapo tuna shaka, pale ambapo tuna maoni tofauti, kuweza kuyazungumzia yale maoni na kutoa fikra zetu. Hiyo ndio hali ya demokrasia. Demokrasia lazima iwe na taasisi ambazo zina nguvu na Wakenya ambao wanaufahamu kwamba wao wakiangazia yale maneno ni katika zile tetesi za kidemokrasia ama mgongano wa fikra. Haijamaanisha hiyo ni hasia. Leo angalia wale wa Amerika walipokuwa wakifanya uchaguzi wao, waliangazia maneno mazito sana. Watu walikuwa wanaongea mambo ambayo yanapita mipaka, ambapo ingekuwa labda leo katika Kenya ingekuwa umeambiwa uko katika hate speech. Donald Trump alizungumza mambo ya Waislamu, mambo ya Mexico, mambo ya wa Somali, mambo ya kila aina ya watu. Lakini walikuwa wanatoa hisia zake, na hisia nyingine katika maisha ya watu zinakuwa ni hisia kali. Lazima, lakini sio pia tu na zile vitu zinaitwa Kiingereza shock absorber. Wakati matamshi, huwezi ukatumia yale matamshi kuwa ndio sababu ya wewe kupigana na mwenzako. Huwezi ukatumia matamshi yangu ikawa ndio sababu ya wewe kupigana na jirani yako. Hata wewe pia uko na upungufu fulani. Kwa hivyo sisi katika fikra zetu, kodi itaendelea. Pale kodi naamini kwamba kama unataka uchaguzi wa uhuru na usawa, ule umiliki wa masala ya uchaguzi una umuhimu zaidi. Kwa hivyo lazima kila pembe ya ule umiliki ama management wa masala ya uchaguzi tutaweza kuiangazia na kuipiga darubini na kuiangazia kwa namna ambayo sisi tutaweza kutoa fikra zetu kama mchango wetu katika vipi ile ratiba iendeshwe. Kwa hivyo asiwe na shaka, hakuna Kenya tarudi katika vita. Huyu ni ndugu yangu, yule ni ndugu yangu. Sisi tunangangana tu kifikra. Yeye ako na maoni yake, mimi niko na maoni yangu. Hiyo ndio hali ya kidemokrasia.
Sawa, asante Margaret, najua kwamba umesikiza na umesikia Senator amekujibu. But now there's also Martin in Nairobi. You want to respond to that, but also as you do that, there's Martin in Nairobi who says there is a way. We don't have to resort to manual systems, and maybe you can give your comments to that, Irungu.
Ningetaka kufuata yale matamshi ambayo yamesemwa na yule dada.
Margaret.
Ndio. Na bila shaka Wakenya wameanza kuona ya kwamba makosa iko pande ya upinzani. Wakenya wameanza kuona ya kwamba upinzani kazi yake si kutakia mazuri nchi yetu. Kwani wamekuwa wakisema hili lisifanyike, lile lisifanyike, tukijaribu kufanya yenye tumeweza kuitikia, tumekaa chini wao tukaitikia nikakuwa sheria, bado wanaendelea kupinga. Kwangu mimi ningetaka kumwelezea huyo dada ajione upinzani, aone shida upinzani na ajue ya kwamba upinzani
I think Irungu here is just campaigning.
No, it's a fact. Listen,
I want us to move away from
one point. It is a reflection of Kenyans being unhappy with these guys. Because what they are doing, they are just changing goalposts. If they were to stick their goalposts to one place, I think that would be very good for each and every country.
Let me tell you, one is, Irungu, in terms of data analysis, one opinion cannot be opinions of Kenyans. What you need to do when you do a research, you take, one becomes opinion. When you take several, a combination, a good sample, then it becomes data. So this is some of the things you need to analyze.
Okay, let me have I want us to move on to something else.
Margaret, that God has promised us peace. Peace will prevail in this country. After the elections, Kenya will be very stable, so let her not live in fear. You have heard from the expert, that gentleman, what is his name?
Martin.
He has conceded that the electronic system can have a problem.
But there's a redundancy.
I want us to look at where the problem is. The problem is not with the electronic system. The problem is the law has fixed only one post. So he is saying there's another way. Now, that another way cannot work until the law is amended to allow it to work. And that is the work of the parliamentarians to come and say, we acknowledge there could be a problem with the electronic system. So what other options do we have? Then those are the options that they amend the law to anchor in the law. So I'm urging them to stop this hard and fixed position, because that position will lead us into trouble. Go there with open mind and say, okay, fine, we agree. This can have a problem. Now, what are the options we have? Then you call those people and say, there's a fixed system, there's a fluid system, there's a yellow system, there's a green system. All this look reasonable. So we say, we will transmit electronically. In the unlikely event, in the very, very unlikely event, in a sporadic areas, if it happens, the law allows you now to start with option 1. If that does not work, option 2. If that does not work, option 3.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we are telling. So go with open.
All right, and I believe you're meeting at 2:30 to have that.
Yes, we are meeting at
to have that discussion
at the court secretariat.
And maybe as you revert to that, so that we finish with IEBC, there was also the issue of NASA rejecting KPMG as auditors. Maybe you could also respond to that.
Number one thing I wanted to make was a broad-based statement. All these costs, billions of shillings investment in technology, the push and pull, all borders around one fundamental issue, the mistrust. I think this is a challenge to whoever is going to get into that IEBC commission as commissioners, that they need to build credibility and acceptability across the political divide. They need to be transparent insofar as practically possible in the management of the electoral system in this country. Because ultimately, unless there is a credible electoral system, people will not try, with these ambers of conflict will continue to flare. So I think for me, it is a question that had we built a credible electoral system, today we would not have had to invest billions of shillings in just electronics and biometrics and all that. This whole thing comes on the basis that if I do not do that, there might be somebody hiding in Kiharu, somebody hiding in my hometown of Kibokoni, and maybe, filling in some results somewhere, and then taking it to the nearest polling station to put them into a ballot box. That's the whole idea. This whole system is based on mistrust.
Okay.
So we need to move progressively.
All right.
I'll be very honest on the second issue of KPMG. I have been in Mombasa for the last couple of days. I've not been able to totally appreciate what the problem with KPMG is. I have known it as one of the audit firms in this country that is reputable, is a fallback, KPMG, and all these other law firms, Deloitte & Touche and Elder. So what I'm going to do is get some clearer insights. Unfortunately, this is one of those times when I say that there's a position out there. I'm not quite particularly conversant with all the facts that led to that decision.
All right, and maybe just to remind us what the opposition leader had to say in regards to KPMG before I come to you, Irungu and Weda, let's just hear out what he had to say.
Tumeona njama inapangwa na Jubilee kuiba kura. Na ndio tumesema vile vile wameweka kampuni hii inaitwa KPMG, ambaye hakuna kokote ulimwenguni ambaye wao wenyewe wamekagua rejista ya uchaguzi. wamewekwa pale tu wafanye kazi ya Jubilee.
All right, and we'll take a call from Joel in Kangemi. Good morning, Joel. Thank you for calling.
Good morning.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, I have a question. I seek some information from, is it Martin Irungu?
Irungu Kangata.
Irungu Kangata, yeah.
Correct,
Now, I want to know what they have done to improve the current system before they go to Plan B, because you cannot work on Plan B when you've not polished Plan A. And secondly, I want to find out from him again why they find it an issue when when opposition raises issue with what they are doing, because that is their work basically. If the opposition supports the government in everything, then there is no opposition. So I want the information on what they have done, and two, I want what they have done. I mean, why they have an issue with opposition opposing what they are doing. And if IEBC is independent, the government should not come in support of IEBC when the opposition is seeming to attack it. They should not even respond in the first place because it's an independent body.
Thank you, Joel. We'll also take a call from Ken in Kajiado. Good morning, Ken. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Ken in Kajiado. Go right ahead.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to go on with that discussion, but I'm not seeing going through. So
Okay.
can I just contribute?
Please put your television off, otherwise it becomes difficult to communicate.
Yeah, I was saying this. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll have to disconnect that call because we don't seem to be communicating, and I think his television is still on and we are running out of time. Let me come to Irungu Kangata. There is a question asked by Joel in Kangemi. What has been done so far to improve the system? I'm not sure that you're in a position to answer that, but also on the question of the government seeming to support IEBC. IEBC is independent, or so it's supposed to be.
So maybe to reply to the first issue, first and foremost, that system has not yet been procured. So we cannot say per se whether that system has been tested or not. The whole idea of tomorrow's amendment is to ensure that in the worst case scenario, this system does not work, we can revert to a plan B. And of course, one has to imagine, we have seen the trends in other jurisdictions. There was hacking in US, there's a problem in Ghana, as alluded by my brother here. So it's a fact, this is a computer. You have to take into account they fail everywhere. And it is usually very hard for us to prevent the failure of such system. In reply to the second question, no, we agree. It is the freedom and the right of the opposition to criticize IEBC, to criticize government, and we have given them the Constitution gives them the freedom to do so. So we have no problem with that. But, however, we would urge their criticism to be constructive. Otherwise, it appears opposition is turning into a destructive mode because they are opposing some of the issues which are emerging out of the agreement. For instance, this issue of KPMG. KPMG came as a result of an amendment to that law, which provided that we must do auditing of that of the voter register. There was a public tender, people tendered, they were decided that they are the best one. Of course, if you're not happy with that, we have an appellate mechanism. We have a public procurement appellate tribunal. You can take your case there. If you are dissatisfied with the decision of that tribunal, you can revert to High Court. So instead of arguing or criticizing that process in a public market or a public agora, you resort to just blasting that process. I think it's very unfair. One ought to have gone to those channels which I have just indicated, as opposed to just opposing. Even apart from that, you have seen the opposition saying that the former IEBC commissioners ought not to be in office as we speak. But we all know that is also provided for in the law. These people will vacate office once new commissioners comes into office. Again, they're also asking, why is it that it appears IEBC is still continuing to plan for those elections, notwithstanding a new team has not come into it. But then again, we must remember we have what we call a calendar events, that IEBC should have done this by December, this by November, this by January 2017. If they fail to do so because of a problem of new commissioners are yet to come in, then you are going to disrupt their planning of 2017 elections, which are quite nearing as we speak.
All right, let's move on to something else, because I think we've dealt on IEBC, and the meeting that is going to take place at 2:30 for CORD, for them to come up maybe with possible solutions if the system fails, and I'm sure they will update us on that. We also have the special sitting tomorrow, and we'll wait and see how that goes. But let's talk about the creation and the coming together of NASA and Senator Omar Hassan. What is it that NASA has to offer Kenya other than the fact that they're coming together to remove Jubilee?
Yeah, the demand to remove Jubilee is itself a demand that can bring competing political interests together. I mean, it is obvious what Kenyans are saying. They do not appreciate the corruption in the Jubilee regime. They do not appreciate the ethnicity reminiscent in them. They do not appreciate even sometimes the erratic behavior that we see of what I call Jubilee mandarins. So Kenyans want an alternative to this type of arena of issues. I may not go to the extreme of saying what Dr. David Ndii said, that anything for Kenyans right now might appear better than Jubilee because of the massive, incapacity, the ineptitude to handle government, to handle the intricacies of government. We have seen systemic failures. And therefore, I think corruption flags it off. In fact, the corruption of the social corruption, which is manifest in ethnicity, has been far eclipsed by the corruption that as we know it. And I think there's a general demand in this country that the opposition ought to come together to remove NASA. And what the opposition has to offer is what it has offered in the last 3-4 years, to demonstrate that they have always had a position of how things could have been done better, of constitutional imperatives that we have taken to court in terms of travesties on the Constitution, the participation we've had in terms of Parliament, the strengthening of institutions, like when faced by potential attack because of independent institutions doing their work. So there has been, the whole idea is a demand-driven need for there to be a coming together of these competing political interests so that they can coalesce into a framework that has the potential to give Kenyans a government that is a fundamental departure, different and distinct from what Jubilee has. And I like the words by James Orengo, that getting power itself or government is not an issue. It is what you do with that government.
Right.
So I think Kenyans want us to do something very different with that government. Jubilee is about preservation. It is only that if we've served as first term, then it is natural that we need to serve a second term, and then, per se, in the terms of the politics of issues, hand over to Ruto in terms of the agreement. But in my assessment, I think there's a general need for this country to have a departure from what we have, to ensure that there's new constitutional practice, we read of corruption and many other issues that bedevil the country.
All right, now it's one thing, and we expect nothing less of the opposition to highlight some of the issues that Jubilee has had and failures, which of course I'm going to put Jubilee, or rather Irungu Kang'ata and Weda on the spot to, as we now even look at winding up the year and we get into 2017, it's another thing altogether to offer solutions. Do you think that CORD has actually offered solutions to some of those problems? It's one thing to highlight, it's another thing to offer solutions.
You see, the solutions are usually captured in a manifesto document closer to elections. What happens at this point in time, as an opposition, you provide oversight. There's the bastardization. Even in Mombasa, I see it with Governor Joho's people. They ask you, what is the solution? I'm providing oversight in the meantime. My solutions will come from my agenda items. When we come, this is what I will do with respect to garbage. This is what I will do with respect to prioritization of budgetary priorities. This is what I will do in terms of investment priorities. This is what I will do in terms of fighting corruption. This is what I will do in terms of management of the economy, or building the local pie so that everybody can benefit from it. So there are all these issues. So that is exactly also what is it called? the same, because we tend to confuse our politics. You expect that I come with a manifesto document every time I say get rid of corruption. It simply means I'm going to do the reverse. It simply means I have an obligation as an opposition to speak to these vices, to oversight, or I have a functional responsibility to oversight. So the whole, and then what happens is, partly is how it's the trust you can have in an individual. If today KTN says we need to revamp, and they look at Michael Gitonga and says he's the man who can lead us to the next. So there is probably something you have demonstrated over the years that can give you the public confidence that you can transform some of these areas or the gaps that exist. So there's a misnomer out there that we need to help to tell Jubilee what to do with their government.
It's not telling Jubilee per se, but there needs to be a yardstick so that
the yardstick.
Come 2017.
Let me tell you, the yardstick. You see what happens now. We're going into an election momentum. Even the times when you look at even developed democracies, they all say that don't evade Iraq. It simply means our value system is you should not bomb other countries. So when now you come into, because we've given thematic responses or respective responses to some of these areas. When we oppose the Security Laws Amendment, when we oppose certain other arena, let's say the VAT on basic commodities, when you oppose, it actually demonstrates your kind of system of values in terms of how you manage a government differently.
Okay.
So when you now come to the electioneering period, is where now you put these issues in one document that constitutes itself as a manifesto document.
All right. Ambrose Weda, is it fair to say that Jubilee generally has dismally failed?
No, that is a language you hear from the opposition.
But we have facts and figures.
Yes,
that would...
we will say that where they have failed and where they've done. If you look at NASA itself, you expect, the only time Honorable Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, as party leader, has been out of office, has been the last 4 years. Otherwise, he's in government for the last 20 years. Is there a single thing he can stand up and say that while I had power, this is what I put on the table for Kenyans? The same as Hon Musalia Mudavadi. He had everything going good for him throughout when he left university. Other than smoldering golden bag, is there anything that can say, look, this one I did? The things we can attribute to Hon Raila Odinga was not when he was in government, but when he was in position. We say he stood up to certain things which were wrong, and then Kenya has been able to improve. So that we can say his achievements have been more when he's out of power than when he's in power. So these people combined, as you can see, they are doing their legs like this. They themselves have no idea, apart from looking for power. There is nothing they are saying. When we come here, we will deal with this. The question of corruption, they themselves cannot deal with it because their closet, unless their closet are full of issues, and they know it, unless they repent fast and say corruption, maize scandal, oil scandal, NYS land, all these things, we did them, but now we are confessing before the people of Kenya we will do well. Jubilee has done quite a lot in terms of infrastructure, which will culminate into the railway system reaching Nairobi and later on. That is there. There are several things that time would not allow us to enumerate. But there are also areas where we have failed, like a question of dealing with corruption, because everybody is looking for money here and there. We are only lucky that our president is not involved in it. And then the other question is cohesion, national cohesion. There again, you've not done well. But it is not such failure that you would think NASA is the solution. NASA is a bigger problem, in fact. Look at the way they are doing their legs. On an occasion like that, Hon Kalonzo does not say, in my presidency, this is the direction I'm going to take. When Mudavadi stands up, there's nothing. All they want is, we want power, we want to remove Jubilee, we want to do this, we want to do that. That is not the Kenya we want. So I don't see, as much as we have two major teams, Jubilee and NASA and CORD. CORD has not put in place things that would merit the removal of Jubilee, unless another third force led by Babuna Mwamba comes and puts things on the table. As we stand, Jubilee is still a better
option, according to you. All right, Senator Omar Hassan, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Then I come to Irungu Kangata. And it's in regards to direction. What direction is NASA saying we're taking as a unit to develop and to move this country to the next level? Other than just criticizing the government. Senator.
I mean, you see, as I said, the opposition has an inherent role to provide oversight. And that oversight is not criticism. The better word probably is critique. You evaluate each and every action of the government. And what we probably might not be talking to, maybe we appreciate what was done. The opposition is an auditor. The opposition audits actions and policies of government. It audits the implementation. You do not expect a positive Auditor General's report.
Which is true,
so for me, and then there's this first, I have to deal with this misnomer. Let me take it for you to understand, almost all. You ask a minister in Governor Ranguma's government or a minister in Governor Kabogo's government or a minister in Joho's government, what did you deliver when you are a minister there? Ministers simply implement the policies of the executive. Ministers are not themselves the principals. It is the principals who steer the direction of government. So when you tell me Kalonzo has been foreign minister and Mudavadi has been vice president and Raila has been in a Musumkate government, we know where the power lied.
That is true, but
so now Matiang'i, I wanted to come to the same issue. When you see Matiang'i deliver, was it, so do you want to say, you hear Jubilee taking that credit for it? But it was because also there was a policy of government that he was put together to spearhead that policy of government.
When he was
so what I'm saying, when you use those piecemeal, and then you accumulate the years they have been in power and say, oh, they delivered nothing. I think that is very, very simplistic.
But sincerely speaking, Senator, if somebody has held a position for many, many years, then honestly there should be something that they should be going home and saying, this is what I delivered.
But they need to, I agree that you need to demonstrate, you can demonstrate that when I was minister, I spearheaded through collective responsibility that I proposed a policy on social justice. I proposed a policy, as he puts it, he was trying to say, on roads. I proposed a policy in terms of reform of the education sector. So those are there. But you cannot necessarily hold a minister responsible for the failure of a government.
Can I comment?
Yes, as we wind up.
The opposition has undergone 3 developmental stages since the introduction.
But before we go to the opposition, Irungu Kangata, can I first of all ask you a question, and this is in regards, what's the biggest failure for Jubilee as far as you're concerned?
Well, one, maybe the issue of corruption, we should have done more. And also, personally on the issue of national cohesion, I think we have done the best. Taking into account our leaders have been visiting all regions, unlike Kibaki, who appeared the last time we went to Luo Nyanza, I think was only 1 or 2 times. But on our part, we have ensured appointments are quite fair. But I want to address the issue which they are discussing about the opposition. Since the reintroduction of multipartyism in the year 1992, the opposition has undergone 3 phases. Between 1992 and 2002, the opposition had no funds, they were controlling nothing. So we would measure their competence in terms of how strong they were in criticizing Moi. But after 2 or 3 or thereabout, there was the introduction of CDF, where individual opposition members were in charge of funds. But the most important shift occurred in the year 2010, when a new constitution was made and opposition post-2013 period, they are now in control of regions where they have resources and they are making independent decisions. And so therefore, currently, the opposition is like the opposition in what we call India or South Africa. The current Prime Minister of India was a governor of a place called Gujarat. He was elected on the basis of what he did as a governor of that region. That region had the lowest unemployment rate. It is the highest GDP growth in India. So based on that record, he was able to convince the people of that country, elect me to become your Prime Minister. And indeed, they did so. And indeed, he's doing a good job. If you look at the way India is going, it's growing at about 7% GDP per annum. When you look to South Africa currently, ANC has been losing elections. The other day, they lost several municipalities. And the reason why people voted for a party called Democratic Party was because Democratic Party was able to tell the people of South Africa, look, how we have managed a place called Cape Town. Compare that with the problems bedeviling municipalities and the ANC. So the same thing should happen in Kenya. These guys called the oppositionists, they control crucial counties. They control, I think, 22 or 23 counties in this country. What have they shown to this Kenya? Is Mombasa doing good? Is Bungoma doing good? Is Kakamega doing good? Is Nairobi doing good? If they can be able to illustrate,
we are removing
we are doing very good. Then no.
We are removing.
It is
we are removing those ones. That's why we are removing you. No, those governors. Already we are removing all those governors you talked about. We are removing.
They represent God. They represent the competence of God.
They have fiercest competition.
Time is up.
Their fierce most competition. Their most competition. But their biggest competition is within CORD. All those three governors you are mentioning about, their biggest competition.
All right, time is up, and gentlemen, we'll have to call it the way it is right there. But let me take this opportunity to thank you very much, especially for being very active this year on the way it is. This may be the last the way it is we're having this year, given that we're just heading towards Christmas. So thank you very much.
Let's say out there, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all Kenyans. And we urge you to keep safe and travel safe.
All right.
Merry Christmas to all of you. Have a bit of self-control. Share whatever you have with your neighbors who do not have much. That is the best you can give your colleagues.
Irungu Kangata, your Christmas wishes.
Merry Christmas to each and every person who is watching us. And for us politicians, we shall not be having a holiday. This will be our busiest time.
Campaigning.
Yes, campaigning.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's the way it is. And, well, this is where we part ways with KTN Home, because they go on to Life and Style. But here on KTN News, do stay with us. We've got some news updates coming up. Then later on, we have Sports Chat. Don't go away.